Hello, Honors Chemistry friends. This is Lab 12, Reactivity of Metals. We're going to try again with the video production and get you ready for lab. We haven't done a nice messy one in a while, so let's see what we can do with Lab 12. In this lab, you're going to be looking at the reactivity of 4 different metals. So what I'm going to give you in this lab includes magnesium, iron, copper, and calcium. So you will be looking at the reactivity of each one of these 4 metals in combination with things like acid and water. So some words of caution. We haven't really used acid yet this year in chemistry. You're going to be using acid that's described as 6 molar. That refers to the concentration, and it's pretty strong. About 12 molar is as strong as I can buy it, so I'm giving you half strength, which is still plenty strong. So use caution with the acid. If you should spill any, you should let me know immediately. If you spill it on the bench top, you should let me know immediately. If you spill it on your hands, you should let me know immediately. Get the picture? You're going to wear goggles at all times when you're in the lab, especially when you're cleaning up. Don't want to see you take the goggles off until you're done cleaning up. So, in this lab, you have a list of materials that you'll need to have out on the lab bench in front of you. I'm going to change this number 7 to 8. You will need 8 small test tubes. And before you come to lab, I would like you to take a look and make a couple predictions for me. I want you to make a prediction based on their position on the periodic table. I want you to predict how reactive, from least to most reactive, these 4 metals are going to be, from least to most reactive: copper, magnesium, calcium, and iron. So if you want, you can take a moment, pause the video, and go ahead and do that. So, whatever you have decided is the order, that's your prediction based on their position on the periodic table. Now, the other thing we want you to predict is based on group chemistry. That has to do with the positions of the elements on the table, much as the first hypothesis did. You're going to predict which elements will produce a colored solution. So that means when I put them in a water, aqueous solution, which one will produce color out of these 4. So take a moment if you like, pause the video, and do that. All right, as far as the lab goes, the procedure is pretty straightforward. You're going to get about 2 centimeters of hot tap water into each of 4 test tubes. We'll run the faucet, get the warm water out of the tap. 2 centimeters. Remember, your pinky is about a centimeter in width. Your pinky fingernail is about a centimeter. So if you use that as an estimate of 2 centimeters, 2 pinkies widths of water. This is qualitative, not quantitative, so the exact amount is not necessary. You're going to put a small amount of each metal, which you will find in little vials labeled at your lab bench tops. The only one that is not going to be present and visible for you is calcium right here. So please, when you're ready for calcium, raise your hand. I will bring it to you and I will give you the calcium where you want it. You pick the test tube, I'll put it in there for you. Now the trick is you have to be ready for calcium, because it says when you put the calcium into water, place a second test tube over the top of the reaction test tube. Take a look at this diagram that I have found for you. This will be not magnesium down here, this will be calcium that I give to you, and you're going to either have, well, you have water for this first part. I'll put the calcium in the water. You're going to take a test tube that's empty and place it inverted over the first one. And you're going to collect the gas. You're going to have some bubbles that are going to come up, and we want to collect this gas in this top test tube. After 2 minutes of collecting the gas, you're going to do a burning splint test, which involves you moving this test tube over here, removing it from the bottom test tube, keeping it inverted, and take a lighted wooden splint, light it on fire, and stick it up inside the test tube. Record your results of this test. See what happens there. Then you're going to move on. After you have observed your observations, and you have placed them into data table 1, looking for things like very strong reaction, little reaction, no reaction. So things that are going to help you remember what you saw, what you observed in that first part of the experiment where you mixed the metals with water. You're going to do the same thing in step 4 that you did in step 1, except instead of water, you're now going to be adding the strong hydrochloric acid to each of 3 separate test tubes. Notice this says 3 separate test tubes. And you're going to be then adding a small amount of each metal except calcium. No calcium in this part of the lab. You do not need to react that with the acid. And again, make some observations, record those into data table 1. Again, as in the earlier part of the lab, do not discard your samples. You're going to keep them. You're then going to go to the front lab table. Well, it's actually going to be the middle lab table. I will have some colored solutions already prepared for you in bottles. That's what I'm talking about here. On the end of the middle lab bench, you will have a series of solutions, and I want you to make observations about the magnesium, the iron, the copper, and the calcium solutions. You will write in this space here. What color do you see? I have written in here just to remind me to remind you of that. After you make those observations, you're going to go back to your test tubes from step 2. So at this point they have water and maybe a little bit of metal in them still, but you're going to add 2 drops of phenolphthalein indicator. Phenolphthalein is an acid-base indicator, and it's going to give you a sense of what the contents of those test tubes are now that they have reacted for a while. And you're going to take those test tubes with the acid-base phenolphthalein indicator in them and record those observations in table 1. So your observations with the phenolphthalein, this is from step 8, go here in this column of the table. Notice the last column of the table, the burning splint results, are only applicable for, right here, the calcium metal. You are not doing a burning splint test for any other metal other than with calcium. When you are done, discard all the test tube, that word should be contents, into the proper waste containers. If there is solid in a test tube, it goes in the trash can. Any liquids may be poured out of the test tubes down the drain with plenty of water. Dump the solids into the trash can. And finally, to clean up, you're going to take any test tubes that you have had liquids and solids in, and you're going to scrub them. You're going to scrub them with the test tube brushes that you will find on the lab benches, and then you will put the test tubes upside down, please, upside down in the test tube holders. That way they will dry for the next group. At that point, you should be done with the lab. Congratulations! Have fun!